It's time, Cougar Nation. Cougar Tracks. The best season analysis with BYU insider Mitch Harper on KSL NewsRadio and on video every day on the YouTube page for KSL Sports.
Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube page and KSL NewsRadio, your legacy home of the Cougars. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. It's Wednesday, January 14th. And 1 month from today, a BYU basketball legend is going up in the Rafters, and that's our top story of the day.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
Jimmer Fredette. He is officially going to have his jersey retired in BYU basketball history. Up in the Rafters on February 14th, BYU will hang Jimmer's jersey in the Rafters at the Marriott Center. That'll be the game against Colorado on Valentine's Day, and it's fitting because all of Cougar Nation loves Jimmer Fredette. Jimmer is an absolute BYU legend in every sense of the word, and Jimmer, well-deserved. You're talking about a first ballot retirement because getting your jersey retired at BYU is no easy task. You think about this. You have to be a first-team All-American. You have to have won in a major award. He won the Wooden Award in 2011. You've got to wait 15 years for that to have passed since your athletic career at BYU. That's why it's happening now. That's why he's a first ballot retirement ceremony, because 15 years ago this winter, Jimmer Mania was sweeping the nation, and everyone couldn't get enough. To be a retired jersey at BYU is a very difficult task, and Jimmer joins the ranks. It's well-deserved. I mean, Jimmer Fredette, he needs no explanation. All of Cougar Nation knows the greatness of Jimmer, and I point to Jimmer Fredette as creating a generation of BYU basketball fans. I think a lot of Cougar fans, when it comes to hoops, don't have many memories before Jimmer. There are some, and I'm not excluding the ones who do. I'm one of those people that remember the days pre-Jimmer Fredette. It wasn't always the greatest, but there were also a lot of great years too. Jimmer, though, was in this intersection of new media with social media kind of taking off with Twitter, with Facebook, and he became a phenomenon. And it was still in the linear TV era phase where everyone couldn't get enough, and it was hard to find the games on the mountain. So it was almost like Bigfoot, him putting up 49-point games, 50-point games. It was like folklore, the highlights that would emerge on ESPN, him dropping it from, 40 feet, whatever he was doing. Jimmer was incredible, and his career at BYU was remarkable. It was 4 years from Glens Falls, New York to Provo. I remember his recruitment. It was down to Siena and BYU. Fran McCaffrey, the former Iowa head coach, I think he's still coaching somewhere now. It was between those two schools, and BYU gets Jimmer. I remember reading about Jimmer in some old HBRnet Cougar Sportsline newsletters about this guy that's just a walking bucket. And then I see him at a practice, because back in the day, you could just go to practice. It was the Dave Rose era. I think I snuck into the Marriott Center because Coach Rose was pretty open with practices. People could just walk in. And I see him for the first time. I thought, this is the guy? This is the dude? And look, there were some images on social media or rivals.com back in the day, scout.com, but there wasn't much. But then you watch him just filling it up and knocking down shots, and it was outstanding to see. His freshman year didn't play much, which was crazy to me because he was so good, even in opportunities coming off the bench. Whenever I see the Murdoch commercials, the car dealership, I always think that's the man who started above Jimmer. That should be a badge of honor for him. But then you realize the talent of Jimmer. He was going to lead the Cougars to amazing things. And he did. He took BYU to their first victory in the NCAA tournament in a long time. From 93 to 2010, 0 wins in the NCAA tournament until Jimmer showed up. They got that big double overtime win over Florida. Then in 2011, he leads BYU to the Sweet 16, and the whole nation could not get enough of Jimmer Fredette. He was a superstar. Sports Center appearances, everything. Jimmer was everywhere, and celebrities couldn't get enough. Social media was talking about him. I remember the post on Twitter from Nelly, Kevin Durant, the greatest scorer in the world. That's Jimmer Fredette. His impact on basketball, he was a verb. Shooting it from Jimmer range. Jimmer! One name, that's all you needed. And that's Jimmer Fredette. And for him to go have his jersey join Kresimir Kosic, Danny Ainge, legends of BYU basketball, well-deserved. And to have it happen, too, with this season, where BYU feels like a team that's having a incredible run that has the ability to get farther than that 2011 team and maybe get to the Sweet 16. I think it's perfect. It honestly worked out. The stars aligned in a way. I remember last year we had Jimmer Fredette on Cougar Sports Saturday, and he hopped onto the show to preview the BYU Arizona game in Provo. And one of my favorite Jimmer moments and memories is his game against Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl Classic in Tucson, where he got a standing ovation from the Arizona crowd at the McHale Center and set the McHale Center record for most points scored with 49. That was, to me, one of Jimmer's finest moments. And it kind of gets forgotten at times, I think, because it wasn't a national TV spectacle. I think it was like FSN, and it was in the middle of the holidays, and people are distracted. People always point to BYU San Diego State 2011, and rightfully so. That was incredible. He was standing at the media table, and everyone, or the scores table, and everyone was just adoring over Jimmer Fredette. And Kirk Morrison, the former San Diego State linebacker, took that epic photo and posted it to social media. But Jimmer had so many amazing moments in his BYU career. And but talking to him last year on Cougar Sports Saturday about the Arizona game, I asked him, are we going to see the jersey retirement because we're approaching that 15-year mark? And, Jimmer, being kind and humble, was like, I'd be honored to get that opportunity, of course. And now that opportunity is here, and it's well-deserved. It's no surprise because Jimmer Fredette was incredible. He changed the game for BYU basketball, and it felt like at the time in 2011, this is as good as it will ever be for BYU basketball. I honestly thought that. I remember going to the Mountain West tournament in Vegas that year and just thinking in that championship game, this is as good as it's ever going to be for BYU hoops. Like, how do you top this? Because keep in mind, to that point, to that season, before everything that happened last year with Kevin Young's first season, getting to the Sweet 16, BYU, they got to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament with the best player in the sport. Danny Ainge in 81, Jimmer Fredette in 2011. Up until last year with KY, you had to have the best player in the sport to make a run at BYU. Now the game's changed, and BYU with Kevin Young is a completely different stratosphere than even the Jimmer Fredette teams. And they had some good teams. Jimmer's squads were really good. Lee Kumard in the early years, Brandon Davies in the latter years, Noah Hartsock, there was Charles Abuo, really good players on BYU's teams. Mike Lloyd had a great performance against Florida in 2010. Really good teams. But Jimmer was a cut above the rest. He was incredible. I wish we could have seen Jimmer versus Kemba Walker in 2011 in the national title game in Houston. It's one of the great what-ifs in my mind in BYU sports history because how that game played out with UConn hammering Butler, who was just mediocre, and Butler was in BYU's region. BYU just had to get by Florida. If they get by Florida, they play Butler, then they play VCU, then it's UConn. Oh, well, what if? But Jimmer Fredette getting his jersey retired, so awesome. Cannot wait for that afternoon game, Valentine's Day. Cougar fans can show their love to the man, the legend, Jimmer Fredette. What a stud. Well-deserved Jimmer. Let's take a break. Let's get to more BYU basketball as the Cougs get ready to take on TCU tonight. It's Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio, and it's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube page. Every day we're talking BYU sports here on Cougar Tracks, and I'm your BYU insider, Mitch Harper. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the KSL Sports YouTube. Like this video if you haven't done so. Would appreciate that a ton. And subscribe to the podcast on audio form. Give a 5-star rating and a review. So portal continues to roll on. We're nearing the finish line of the transfer portal window. That's coming up on Friday. Keep in mind, if there's any names that kind of filter out over the weekend, that's not surprising because you just got to notify administrators and people that handle the portal at your respective school on Friday. And sometimes there's a little bit of a 24 to 48 hour trickle effect after. So keep that in mind if we see any last minute adds to the portal for BYU. But for the most part, the Cougars have done a fantastic job at retaining their roster, and I think it leads to a lot of excitement for what this 2026 BYU football team can be with the additions that they've pulled from the portal, the retention. It's exciting times for this BYU football team. Still, I think there's still some areas on this roster that could be bolstered via the portal, and here are the spots that I feel are remaining needs for this BYU football team in the transfer portal. Number one, cornerback. I think you got to add a few more cornerbacks to the secondary for BYU. I look at the cornerback position right now for the Cougars. It's really solid. It's more of a depth add and maybe some young underclassmen that you can develop and maybe have a lot of remaining years, and they can invest into this BYU program. If you're looking for a one-and-done guy, that's not the move here at cornerback because you've got Evan Johnson and Trey Alexander returning. Those are going to be your starters. But some young underclassmen to add depth that maybe got some good measurables, got some potential. I think that would be the move here at the cornerback position because, again, you got Evan Johnson, you got Trey Alexander, Jonathan Kambea, Jordan Chris. I talked about him during bowl season. He is trending up. I think he's going to be in the 2 deep for BYU. Cannon DeVries, excellent athlete, could play safety, could play corner. Cannon DeVries is a stud. He's a really good player. Kevin Doe, really good developmental guy, had an impact on special teams. I think he's one to watch with how elite his speed is. And then you bring in Justice Braithwaite as well. So some names that outside of Shmev and Trey, maybe you're not too familiar with yet, but add some portal guys to bolster the depth. Iron sharpens iron. I think that would be the move there. Running back as well. And when you look at the portal for running back, it's pretty much rated. Now, I don't think you're going to find some outstanding elite running back to add to this group. But I say this with the context of you are chasing the college football playoff next year. You've got a superstar in LJ Martin returning. You know that. Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He should be a Doak Walker favorite next season, one of the favorites. LJ is one of the best running backs in college football next year. And with that, that's kind of hard to maybe pitch to guys in the portal, hey, come be RB2. But there's so much value to having a stable of running backs. The cliche thunder and lightning, yes. But I think also from the standpoint of you don't want to be in a position where you experienced in 2025 where LJ gets banged up. And look, he only missed one game, the Pop-Tarts Bowl. He gut-checked that thing in November, and he had some incredible moments. We'll talk about the running backs around the corner here. But you think about the Iowa State game, you think about the Pop-Tarts Bowl, where there just wasn't much of a threat to run the ball. You go from one of the best running backs in the country to then suddenly, can you run the ball? That's a drastic drop-off. And that's what BYU faced in some of these games this past season when LJ wasn't available. So can you get to a point, yes, the development from within the room, Sione Moa's, Jovesa DeMooney's, yes, but again, Sione Moa coming back from compartment syndrome, which I think we're all kind of learning about from this past fall. And then Jovesa DeMooney had a nice moment in the bowl game, but you need someone else. You need another guy because you don't want to go from best running back in the land, and if he gets nicked up and he rolls an ankle or something, then you're feeling like, can we run the football? So to me, you look at some of these players in the portal, like a Sesi Vailahi. He was someone that's a local kid, was at Oklahoma State. This past year, not much production at Oklahoma State, but he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. I think that would be an interesting add. And then Joshua Dye, Southern Utah prospect, FCS All-American. He hasn't signed anywhere, had some interest from UCLA. He ran for 1,800 yards, 5'11", 200-something pounds. Joshua Dye. How about that? I mean, I would love to see that sort of tandem. And look, you're not going to be the 1,800-yard rusher at BYU as LJ Martin's backup. But you can have, there's volume. If you want to run the football like BYU does, they want to run the ball. Can Joshua Dye, someone like that, or whoever it is out of the portal, can they take Bears carries? Can they take those runs so Bears not having to take as many hits this season? I think that's the thought too. Not having your quarterback be your second leading rusher. Bear's great, and he's phenomenal, and he's got to run. That's part of the DNA of Bear. But to have another option in that backfield would be outstanding for BYU. I think running back's got to be a top priority. I understand that the portal's been rated pretty much, but there's still, when you dig deep in there, there's still some guys that I think would be valuable ads for BYU, and those are two guys that I would look at that makes sense from a previous connection with Vailahi coming out of the high school ranks locally, and then Joshua Dye being someone down in Cedar City. Would he want to make the drive up to I-15 north to Provo to reside at BYU? Those would be two names that I would look at that would make a lot of sense to me. Other positions, a fourth quarterback, just to kind of round out the group. I thought it was underrated, and I know that Trayson Bourget kind of made a joke about it with his run it back graphic, but I thought it was important that he wants to be back at BYU. And I've said all along that Trayson is really invested and loves being at BYU, so it didn't come as a surprise that he's, quote, running it back. But I think it's important to keep that quarterback room steady because you have two quarterbacks that have been part of the program more than a year now. And Bear Bachmeier and Trayson Bourget. For Bourget, he's been around the program for 2 years now. And I think that's valuable because if Bear ever gets banged up, you might have someone that you can turn to, potentially. Enoch Watson's also there. Can you get a fourth quarterback? BYU extended an offer to CJ Tiller, a Utah State quarterback, former Boise State QB who started in the LA Bowl a few years ago for Boise State. So maybe they'll have a fourth quarterback added to that mix. And then finally, I would say just any player that can make you better at any position. And again, the portal is pretty much rated at this point. The top 100 guys quickly went off the board. They are pretty much gone. But if there's someone that you could get in the mix on that makes you better, pie in the sky, I'd go chase a Jordan Seaton, man. Offensive tackle from the Colorado. Ooh, man, that would be elite. Elite. You're talking about a first-round NFL draft pick protecting guys like Bear Bachmeier, but that might be a little unrealistic. There's talk that maybe Miami, Texas Tech, the usual portal suspects when it comes to high-level guys like that. But, find guys that can make you better. Don't be complacent and don't just say, we're set. If you can get in the mix on someone and you think he can make you better, go get that guy. I think that's always something that I think is important with BYU, but they've also done a fantastic job with retaining their core. So they're in a great position heading into post-transfer portal and getting settled into winter conditioning and the ramp up to spring football coming up around the corner. Speaking of 2026, we're getting ready for way too early outlooks for next season, but got to still close the book on 2025, and our position review series rolls on with the running back position, and we'll make this one quick because it's one man that really carried the workload. That's LJ Martin. He's the MVP of this group from 2025. Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, ran for over 1,300 yards this season. I would also add he's the most improved as well. LJ went from a really good BYU running back to one of the best in college football this past season. My biggest takeaway from this group, LJ Martin is a superstar, and not only is he a great player, I thought he emerged as a leader too, and I thought that was something of note because, again, I'm a big believer the best players have to be the leaders at BYU for this thing to work and for that culture that gets talked about a lot, for it to operate at the highest level. That matters a ton, and LJ was great on that front. I think the best moment for LJ was his game against Cincinnati. 222 rushing yards, a career-high day for LJ. And when you go back and revisit that game, the stakes were much bigger than I think we realize, because if you lose that game, Cincinnati gets back into the mix for the Big 12 championship race. BYU probably doesn't go to the Big 12 title. And winning that game sealed the deal, because next week they played UCF and they already knew it was over. They're going to the Big 12 championship game. So that was the clincher. And LJ was brilliant, running for a career-high 222 as they needed to get that win to get to Arlington. I thought that was the best moment of the season. The rest of the running back room in 2025, Enoch Nawahine, his eligibility has been exhausted. Former Utah State transfer, was part of the program for the past 4 seasons. Did a solid job. Had some moments. I mean, Pop-Tarts Bowl, the SMU game in 2024, Enoch Nawahine was kind of a career guy that was just invested in the program and stayed with it and wanted to be part of the BYU team. Family ties to the BYU program. That was one of the big pulls for him to come to Provo. But Enoch Nawahine exits BYU. Sione Moa, can he stay healthy? Because he got banged up against East Carolina, and then he had a flight home where he couldn't sit down. It was just a real intense ordeal flying across country, and he was faced with compartment syndrome. Played in the Big 12 championship game, but can he be looked upon to be RB2? I think if he's healthy, he absolutely can. He could. I mean, Sione Moa is an outstanding athlete, a fantastic athlete, but it's just, there's been back-to-back years now where he's just faced injuries. If he is healthy, Sione Moa is a stud, but compartment syndrome just sounds intense. So we'll see what happens there with Sione Moa going forward. Preston Rex flipped from safety to running back in fall camp in 2025 and had some moments during the season, more of a pass catcher out of the backfield for BYU as he continues to learn the running back position. Lucky Finau is in the running back room, Kalani Sitake's nephew. Jovesa Damuni had a breakout moment in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm really curious to see what type of momentum that performance in bowl season gives to Jovesa heading into spring ball. You know, that's going to be big because in the 2025 season, he has that fumble against West Virginia, and everyone talked about it. And I'll give Jovesa credit. I think back to spring, he had moments that gave the coaching staff confidence that if called upon, he could produce. But that fumble was a backbreaker against West Virginia that led to points for the Mountaineers. It felt like he was never going to recover from that until bowl season when the opportunity posed itself with LJ out. Jovesa capitalized on his opportunity and ultimately got the game-winning touchdown against Georgia Tech. And then finally, Logan Payne, someone that I'm really high on. I think he's got a lot of ability. I think he could be a really good player for BYU in the running back position, but ultimately did not see the field this fall. That's the running back position for BYU in 2025 as they look ahead to the 2026 season moving forward. This is our final break. On the other side, we'll get to BYU versus TCU as BYU Hoops gets ready to take on the Horned Frogs next here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports. Welcome back into Cougar Tracks here on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports YouTube page. It's a late one tonight. BYU Basketball. The 11th ranked Cougars are going to take on TCU at the Marriott Center. Last year, BYU lost to TCU in Fort Worth. That ended a 17-game win streak against TCU for BYU. They'll look to get some revenge tonight against this TCU squad. 9 p.m. tip-off. Pre-game at 8 here on KSL. So get the nap in before this BYU TCU game, a late one. I got to say, Big 12, I know that there's a lot of media partners involved with the Big 12 and basketball because you got ESPN, you got Fox, you got CBS, you've got NBC now. Really, with all those media partners, do we still need a 9 p.m. game on a weeknight? My kids go to the games with their grandpa, the BYU basketball games and football, but weeknight 9 p.m. games, even my younger son, he's like, that's pretty late, Dad. I don't know if I can stay up. I'm like, well, don't worry, you're staying home because it's a school night and you need your sleep. And even my oldest, who loves going to the games, loves BYU basketball, he's like, yeah, that's pretty late. So I wish that these 9 p.m. tips were not a thing because it's great for the students. I think students like it. And ultimately, I'm a night owl, so I don't mind. But it's just, I don't know. I just don't like the late tip when you have so many different media partners. You can spread it out. Do you really need a 9 p.m. tip? Like, give me 7 p.m. on Peacock. I'll take that in a heartbeat over 9 p.m. on the Deuce. Anyway, BYU and TCU. It's a good matchup. It's number 9 in the net, BYU. Number 43 in the net, TCU. So it's a quad 2 opportunity for the Cougars. What I'm watching for in this game, A.J. DeBonsa, some of the turnovers in Big 12 plays, averaging 5 per game in the Big 12. But I thought it was noteworthy that the number continues to go down from the 7 he had against K-State, 5 against ASU. It goes down to 3 against Utah. And that was significant, one, because the intensity of the Utah game, 1. 2, just how much attention Utah was throwing at A.J. DeBonsa. I mean, double, triple team. You don't see that typically much in January for a guy getting that much attention. Maybe in the NCAA tournament, maybe in a game that's win-or-go-home setting. But in a regular season game like that, you don't see that often, much. And look, I've covered BYU basketball a long time, and I don't see many A.J. DeBonsas coming through the door, if ever. We talked about Jimmer Fredette earlier. AJ's a one of one still. And if he gets BYU to the heights that people hope to see this team get to, which is the Final Four and maybe a national championship, put his jersey in the rafters ASAP because he will have deserved it if he gets him there. Still, got to get ready for tonight against TCU, and I'm curious to see how he handles this TCU team that's really good defensively, but this was KY on A.J. DeBonsa and how he responded to all that attention that Utah was throwing at him.
I mean, it just speaks to his talent. I mean, you can't, and his quick decision-making, that's something we've talked about a lot. I learned that when I had some great players in the NBA. If you hold the ball when the double team's coming, you're going to have a long night. But he figured out how to go quick on some of those rejects, some of the double teams. But, I mean, he's such a high IQ guy. Still got to the line a bunch. Still should have gotten to his average because he missed a couple of those free throws. But, I thought he made the right play more than he didn't. He'll learn from some of the mistakes that he made with the double teams. I mean, I think it surprised him with how many bodies they were throwing at him. And like I said, after the game, they were determined to not let AJ beat him. But in a lot of ways, I think he did beat him because he made a lot of good reads. We got a lot of wide open shots because of the attention he drew.
TCU's 24th nationally in adjusted efficiency defensively. That's some of the Ken Pom metrics. 64th nationally in scoring defense at 68.4 points per game allowed. Talked to Steven Johnson, TCU insider, yesterday, and he even said that if TCU's going to win this game, they got to muck it up. They got to make this thing a slower paced game, keep BYU under 80 points. So seeing how AJ responds to that defensive pressure from TCU will be something to watch. And if he can continue to have this positive trend of the turnovers going down, something to monitor there. Keep shooting the ball well. BYU is at 50% from the field in Big 12 play. BYU stays at that mark, they're going to beat nearly anyone in this league. And you see in the Big 12 that even the number 2 team in the country, Iowa State, they got crushed at Kansas last night. And I kind of wondered if Iowa State's, like, they're really good, but I don't know if they were number 2 in the nation good, just because I don't know if they've got future NBA guys. I feel like if you want to be the upper crust of the sport in terms of these are the top elite teams, you kind of need that, but still, Iowa State got crushed. But if BYU shoots at 50% as they've been doing in the first 3 games of Big 12 play this year, they could beat anyone in this conference, and that's what they've been doing. They've been 66 of 107 attempts inside the arc. They're really good from 2. 3-point percentage, want to continue to improve that. I thought they were very poor against Utah, 27% from beyond the arc, so improve that number. But inside the arc, BYU really efficient during Big 12 play this season. I've also been really impressed with how BYU has been crashing the glass against Big 12 teams. They're out rebounding their Big 12 opponents by at least 8 rebounds per game, 117 to 92 through 3 games. And I think what's of note coming out of that is that Keita, he's been dealing with a little bit of an ankle out of that Kansas State game. Keita feeling pretty good after that Utah game, that according to head coach Kevin Young.
He feels good. He feels good. He's had a few setbacks throughout the year, but just got done practicing, had a good practice. I think his motor when it's running high is when he's at his best. I thought in Kansas State game he was tremendous. I think that was the game he had 16 rebounds. I think it was. And so just when he just gotta push through this little deal he had, which he has, and now hopefully we get him back full strength and ready to get back to that level of that high energy K that we all love.
And the good news on Keita is that he's not on the availability report heading into tonight. The only guys that are on the availability report, the ones that you typically expect, Kozlowski, Perry, Pickens, Baker, we know the deal with them. Questionable, Xavier Staten, big center, freshman, he's questionable. And then probable, Abdullah Bidu Ahmed, he's on the availability report. But Keita, not there. And that's just a good sign because dealing with that ankle, how did he feel after the game with the emotions coming down? KY said he's feeling good, and it showed up on the availability report because if they get a healthy Keita game after game after game, that's massive. That guy is so underrated in terms of his value because it often gets overlooked with how outstanding the top 3 players are on this BYU team. But Keita, man, when he is on and he's healthy and you can keep stacking those days with a healthy, energized Keita, BYU is going to be a force that you don't want to mess with in the heart of Big 12 play. Another big storyline in this game against TCU is Tanner Toolson, former BYU Cougar, returning to Provo. Remember, he was part of the BYU team for one season in 2022 to 2023 under former head coach Mark Pope. KY didn't coach Tanner Toolson, but there was some talk that, Tanner Toolson was considering BYU in the portal last cycle, ultimately signs with TCU. This was KY on Tanner Toolson and the thoughts on him heading back to the Marriott Center.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him, and Adam Stewart's also on their team, whose parents are my neighbors, so there's a lot of Utah ties to TCU. Yeah, I'm familiar with Tanner. He's a tough young man. He plays really gritty. I know the Toulsons. I know Ryan Toulson. I don't know how they're all related, but I know the family. I talked to Tanner just since being here and stuff. Great young man, great family. He's been a part of some of the big wins that they've had. So it'll be fun to compete against him. Wish him the best.
Toulson had a team-high 20 points for TCU in their last outing against Arizona, and TCU got down big, 21 points to the Wildcats. Kind of made it interesting for a little bit. I think they got it down to 8 or 9 points, but then ultimately Arizona pulled away. This TCU team, been a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde, wins over Florida, wins over Wisconsin. They took Michigan blow for a full 40 minutes on their home court, nearly won that game. It's a good TCU team, solid. I don't know if they're an NCAA tournament team. They need a win like tonight against a team to the caliber of BYU to really make it clear they're a tournament team, but solid. And that's kind of been the trend with Jamie Dixon's squads at TCU in Cowtown. Let's give you my score prediction for tonight's game.
Score prediction. Will BYU come out on top? It's time for Mitch's score prediction for the next game.
Lucky 13, I've got BYU winning their 13th consecutive game this season. Cougs get it done, 86-71. That's my score prediction for tonight's game for BYU. I think it'll be a sound effort. I'm kind of wondering if there's going to be a little bit of a slow start. I think they jump on TCU early, honestly. I feel like there will be a strong start out of the gates coming out of this one, because I think the ranking of dropping 2 spots in the AP, even though it doesn't have any impact whatsoever on BYU's goals this year, I think it bothers them a little bit. They want to send a little bit of a statement here. I think they get a sound 15-point win over a solid TCU team tonight at the Marriott Center. Going to have full coverage on KSLSports.com, so look out for that, and then I'll have post-game reaction as well from inside the Marriott Center. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Talk to you next time here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports.